Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
All right, Joe, before we get into National Signing Day, early National Signing Day, which as I call it now, just the National Signing Day because the late signing day means nothing. Let's talk about what might be even more important in today's college football landscape than signing day, and that is the transfer portal. It's become so ridiculous and huge now that I believe that it has changed from just a portal to Stargate. For those of you who are not as old as Joe and I, it's a 90s movie that refers to a gate that you can go into to another world that's some kind of strange Egyptian futuristic world. But that's what we have now with the portal. It's not like if you are a fan of his Dark Materials, the Golden Compass, the small little slivers they go between worlds. It's huge gaping gulfs that all of these players are jumping into. I believe there's something like 500 players in the portal now, and it's gotten to the point where even Bo Nix of Auburn has joined the portal. Of course, Bo Nix is the legacy of all legacies at Auburn. His dad was a starting quarterback in the 90s. Pat Nix, just like Bo, when he first, I believe it was the first play he ever played for Auburn, where he was the starter when I can't think of his name right now. Stan White, when Stan White got injured, Pat Nix threw a touchdown pass against Alabama to cap off Auburn's undefeated 1993 season. And of course, Bo Nix threw the game-winning pass against Oregon. And that leads us to, Joe, a possible landing spot for Bo Nix in the transfer portal is Oregon, which wouldn't that be something? Apparently, he and Kenny Dillingham became quite close when Kenny Dillingham was Auburn's offensive coordinator Bo's freshman year. And a lot of people, including friend of the show, Kyle, who is a tortured Georgia fan, has asked me my thoughts on Bo Nix transferring from Auburn. And my thoughts are, bye, Felicia. At this point, I'm just kind of over it, Joe. I'm over all of this untapped potential. It's like the city of Mobile. It's the city of perpetual possibilities, and we're always going to be a great city at some point. We're just that close to getting there. Bo's like that, and he just never. Every time he takes a step forward, like the LSU game, I mean, that's great. I mean, he won in Baton Rouge for the first time in 22 years, and of course, he was going to be the guy to do that. He knew he was going to be that guy, and then just when Auburn is suddenly they're right in the thick of the SEC West race, everything is working. He drops the ball against Texas A&M. I mean, literally drops the ball on 2 plays in a row in a game where the defense is playing out of their minds. And the defense, they weren't never going to score a touchdown less in that game. And then, of course, it goes downhill. He gets injured against Mississippi State in a game where we give up a huge lead. And then the rest of it is history. And now, apparently, even though he's not going to get drafted by anybody, he is entering the transfer portal, and fairly well.
Yeah, I mean, it's, welcome to 2021 as far as people entering the transfer portal, and we'll see where he lands. I think that Oregon's definitely a strong possibility. I think that makes sense. But you just never know. I've also heard some speculation that if Tank Bigsby transfers, that they could actually be a package deal for one another, which could be kind of interesting. But, like I said, welcome to 2021. There's just so many players entering the transfer portal. And I liked what you said about there being 500 players currently in there. I think the number is only going to grow because here's the thing. I think there's a lot of players that are kind of waiting for the bowl season to end, and maybe they're just wanting to kind of wrap up the season and get to go to a bowl game. And then if they just don't like how spring practices are going, they'll decide to transfer anyway. So I think that you'll see players enter the transfer portal in mid-January. You'll see players enter it after spring practice. I mean, it's just going to be kind of a moving target.
Yeah, Joe. And I mean, I can't speak to what's actually going on in the minds of these players, including Tank Bigsby, but I've heard, Brian Harsin came on Feinbaum today and said there's nothing to that, and that apparently that's all been worked out and that he's going to stay at Auburn. But I don't know whether that's true or not. This is just what I've heard. Yeah. But, when you talk about people like Spencer Rattler transferring, and to me, what an amazing fall from grace Spencer Rattler has had, where he came into last season as the overwhelming Heisman Trophy favorite, overwhelming favorite to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And of course, he gets benched and Caleb Williams takes over. And then now he's transferring and he's not just transferring, he's transferring to South Carolina. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm very impressed by the job that Shane Beamer has done. And I mean, of course, he beat Auburn. So if you want to be a South Carolina fan and get on me, you can, but it's South Carolina though. I mean, I don't understand how you can be the number one overall quarterback, have all these accolades, and now you're going to transfer, which of course, you know, you can argue the merits or the possible cowardice or the motives behind doing that, but you're not even going to transfer to Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Alabama, Miami, Florida State. You're going to South Carolina. I mean, to me, what an amazing story that is, and how far he has fallen from the heights that he was at.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And when you think about the grand scheme of things with football at South Carolina, they may be the most irrelevant SEC football team, because even Vanderbilt's more relevant because they're so bad. Everybody knows them as Vanderbilt, being bad. South Carolina, I don't know what their label is. And, kind of stuck behind Clemson, who they haven't beaten, in almost a decade now. So, it's going to be tough sledding for Spencer Rattler. I mean, maybe South Carolina can get some momentum, with the way the trajectory of the program's going. Maybe Rattler can be that guy that can beat Clemson for him in a year or two. But honestly, I don't really see it. I was really baffled by his decision to go to South Carolina.
I mean, Joe, it's almost as baffling as South Carolina's decision to not join the ACC when it was created. That would have been the conference for them to join. They've probably been pretty good in that. And to me, that made zero sense them joining the SEC. But I mean, in my mind, who I would akin Spencer Rattler to, and this isn't even really a fair comparison. I think Rattler's still leaps and bounds ahead of this guy. Felipe Franks is someone that kind of comes to my mind a little bit. Felipe Franks comes in, he's highly regarded. I think he was a 5-star recruit at Florida. He starts from day one. He has kind of a little bit of a bad attitude. He does some weird things on the sidelines, kind of brash. And then he gets benched eventually, and then he transfers to Arkansas, right? And I mean, he does okay, but of course, it's Arkansas. I mean, he's not gonna reach the heights that he wants to. And I feel like Spencer Rattler going to USC, the second USC, is kind of like when Felipe Franks went to Arkansas.
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel. It's kind of like taking a step back for him. Encouraging for the program, but surprising for Rattler. But, we'll see how it goes for him going forward. And speaking of the transfer portal, Oklahoma's in for a dogfight to try to keep Caleb Williams and try to, prevent him from following Lincoln Riley out to USC or going elsewhere. And so, like I said, the transfer portal, it's a moving target. But at the same time, as Lane Kiffin has said, it kind of makes free agency in college football. And I know that Ole Miss, as we like to talk about them also on the show, they're going to be looking for a quarterback. And you hear a lot of speculation about Dylan Gabriel being a candidate from UCF.
Which I think that would be a great fit. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, his first 2 years at UCF was absolutely amazing. If I'm not mistaken, he went to the same high school that Tua went to, which apparently is just putting out this amazing quarterbacks. He has all the gifts you could want. And then, of course, what happens every time Gus Malzahn gets his poisonous claws into a quarterback, they disappear off the face of the earth. I mean, we were talking about this before the show, Joe. He's had one quarterback that flourished under him, and that's because you and I could have coached Cam Newton to winning a national championship. He was that special of a talent. And Nick Marshall was not a quarterback. He was an athlete. And he basically ran, an offense that might be more akin to what you saw with Nebraska in the mid-90s almost, when you had people that were really not more like halfbacks than they were quarterbacks running the offense. And so, Dylan Gabriel suffered the same fate that a lot of people have, including Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham went to Auburn. He was a 5-star transfer. And after his first season, it looked like he would probably have been a first-round draft pick if he had gone out. And then after one more season with Gus, suddenly he gets mired as a 4th-round draft pick with the Patriots and has never started a game for him. And Stidham was a can't-miss prospect. So, I mean, one thing I'll say, I'm sure a lot of Auburn fans are thinking right now, well, you know what? Gus wouldn't have blown those leads against Mississippi State and Alabama and South Carolina. And you're right, he wouldn't have. That's true. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But by the same token, you would have to deal with things like Dylan Gabriel becoming a bad quarterback because of Gus. Jared Stidham taking huge steps back. Bo Nix taking steps back between his freshman and sophomore year. You saw it for many years in a row. That wasn't going to change. So, I'm not a big right now. I'm very lukewarm on Harsin, but I still prefer him to Gus.
Well, it'd be interesting if Gabriel goes from the Gus bus to the Lane train in Oxford, and Ole Miss is looking to rebuild in many ways this year, but at the same time, next year they'll have a very manageable schedule the first 5 or 6 weeks. Like, I'd have to look at the schedule again, but I think they start out the season with like 3 fairly winnable games. I think they go to Georgia Tech, so they have a really good chance to start out 5-0 before I think they even get to the SEC slate. So whoever the quarterback is, they'll have some flexibility to kind of get, things going. Are there any other players or programs right now you're looking at as far as like the transfer portal, like at the moment?
Well, Joe, I just want to say that the most upsetting thing that could possibly happen to me as an Auburn fan is if we got Bo Nix and he left us in the transfer portal and we got Taylor Martinez out of Nebraska as our next quarterback. Because to me, he might be an even worse version of Bo Nix. That would be like the worst trade ever. Like, you're trading someone that has all these deficiencies for someone that has the same deficiencies except heightened. So I'm interested to see where Taylor Martinez ends up at, because he might be the only person that is more erratic and frustrating to watch than Bo.
Well, I got confused, and I talked to other people that did too, because I remember Adrian Martinez played there for several years, and then I get him confused with Taylor Martinez. And so you feel like they've had a Martinez for like 10 years at Nebraska.
And none of them have really done much.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But, yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing right now. And, it is a great way for, if you're an enterprising coach like Shane Beamer is, not only did he get Spencer Rattler, he also got a former 5-star tight end from Oklahoma that was kind of a little bit buried on the depth chart, but who's absolutely a day one starter at South Carolina. So you can build your program up from a severe lack of talent to someone that's got some playmakers. And you know what? One person in particular has parlayed that into a $95 million guaranteed deal after one season. And we're talking about Mel Tucker. I mean, he took over a Michigan State program that had nothing, that was mired in scandal with, D'Antonio and his dealings with Nasser, the gymnastics coach. That kind of like went, across the board in Michigan State athletics. And he goes in the transfer portal, gets Kenneth Walker, gets all these other guys, and suddenly they were the toast of the town for a little bit, got up to number 2, and he parlayed that into just stealing $95 million from Michigan State when he might lose his last like 3 games of the regular season. And, but he shows what you can do if you can get some guys in the portal. So it's unnerving. It causes a lot of issues. I mean, seems like you're taking away from the spirit of the sport to an extent, but it also does, in some ways, it's a little bit of an equalizer.
And it forces you to year in, year out kind of have to recruit within your program. You can't take for granted once you sign somebody on National Signing Day or early National Signing Day that you've got them for 3 years. You have to continue to reevaluate with each passing off season. But I thought it's interesting you brought up Kenneth Walker. I didn't realize until recently that he had started out at Wake Forest. And I think about how crazy that would have been, as good as Wake was this year offensively if they had Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, one of the things that we didn't get to see in terms of great debates this year in the college football season is what would have happened with an undefeated Wake Forest. I was kind of hoping that would happen to see, if Cincinnati's undefeated and so is Wake Forest, they get in over Cincinnati. What about if you had a 2-loss Alabama? If that had happened where Georgia beat them, would a Wake Forest team gotten over them? I don't know. You've never seen what I would say a not blue blood ACC team, which I guess Clemson is kind of a new blue blood, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in the blue blood category, not get into the playoff. But then again, you've never had an undefeated team out of the ACC that's not Florida State or Clemson. So it'd be interesting to see, teams like I wouldn't say Virginia Tech even. I would say North Carolina. I would say North Carolina. I don't know whether they would have gotten in. Wake Forest, obviously Duke. If Duke ever went undefeated, like would they get into the college football playoff? I don't know. I would have liked to have seen that.
Well, even Pittsburgh, I know that Dan Marino went there, but at the same time, like they had a good chance to go undefeated. like their two losses were like really winnable games. Like they lost to Miami by like one possession, and they lost to like some team they definitely should have beaten. So Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett easily could have been undefeated.
Right. Well, Joe, we talked about it. You know, people like Shane Beamer have used this thing to really elevate their program. Of course, Mel Tucker. And now we're going to talk about what has possibly been diluted by this Stargate-sized transfer portal, and that's signing day. But we're going to get to signing day in the next program. We want to thank all of our listeners. You can follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at DJ Sports Show. And of course, you can listen to all of our old episodes on Spotify, and you can subscribe to our new YouTube channel, the Dan and Joe Sports Show YouTube channel, catch all of our old episodes lately. And as always, I'm Dan.
I'm Joe.